San Diego Union-Tribune is San Diego's largest and most experienced news organization, winner of 4 Pulitzer Prizes and 37 regional Emmys. We deliver the news with depth, authority, and over 150 years of local knowledge. Our journalists speak truth to power. The Union-Tribune serves everyone who cares about our community. Support our work. Subscribe today on our website, SanDiegoUnionTribune.com.
Los habitantes de San Diego logran grandes cosas todos los días. Nos preocupamos por nuestros vecinos y por nuestra comunidad. Nos adaptamos al cambio. Hacemos que nuestros líderes rindan cuentas. Vivimos en una de las ciudades más dinámicas de América, el San Diego Union-Tribune y el Union-Tribune en español. Hemos contado la historia de San Diego por más de 150 años.
We use our phones to order food, share our stories, and so much more. SDCCU made banking from your mobile device easy too. You can do so much. Get up-to-date account balances, deposit checks, and more, safely and securely, all through the convenience of your smartphone. Get all of this and more with free checking with e-statements. SDCCU, it's not big bank banking, it's better.
Hello, I'm Dr. Noelle Norton, Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences at the University of San Diego.
And I'm Brian Clack, a Vasiliadis Director of USD's Humanities Center.
USD, along with the College of Arts and Sciences and the Humanities Center, is proud to be the presenting sponsor for the 2022 San Diego Union-Tribune Festival of Books on the USD campus.
Our partnership with the Festival of Books enables all of us avid readers to come together as a community, alongside renowned authors from all over the world, and to dive deeply into imaginative stories and important themes.
As a university deeply committed to the liberal arts, USD promotes a form of lifelong learning that ignites curiosity, builds critical connections across different ideas and topics by seeing them from different perspectives.
On behalf of the University of San Diego, we thank you for joining us for today's program to explore the world of books with us.
Enjoy the festival.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the 2022 San Diego Union-Tribune Festival of Books. I'm Kristy Totten, host of the San Diego News Fix podcast at the Union-Tribune, and today we're here to discuss I Am Golden, written by Eva Chen and illustrated by Sophie Diao. Eva Chen is a first-generation Chinese American who grew up in New York City. She blames her deviation from pre-med at Johns Hopkins University on a love of fashion and beauty instilled in her by her mother, whose perfect bob and lipstick made a permanent imprint on her impressionable young mind. She is currently the head of fashion partnerships at Instagram, where she is guilty of the occasional duck-faced selfie. Eva lives in New York City with her husband and 3 children. She is also the author of 8 children's books. Sophie Diao is an artist and daughter of Chinese immigrants. She has illustrated multiple picture books, including I Am the Wind, Sarah and the Big Wave, and I Am Golden. She's done work for Pixar, Cartoon Network, and the Ad Council, and is the talent behind many a Google Doodle. Sophie lives in San Francisco with her husband and their scruffy dog. Welcome both Eva and Sophie. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks so much for having us. We're excited to be here.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we're so excited.
Yeah, it's great to have you. I'm a big fan of your book, and I was hoping we could start with a reading just to give the audience, a preview of it.
Sure. Well, thank you again for having Sophie and me. It's actually, we haven't seen each other in a few months since our book tour, so this is like a nice little reunion, and I'm amazed by Sophie's Rapunzel-esque locks right now. Aspirational, I'll put it that way. Okay, so we'll start by reading the book, and Sophie is going to be holding it up to kind of share the stunning illustrations that she created. So we'll get started. I Am Golden. Get to the front page. Lots of front matter, as they call it. I don't know if they call it that.
Can you read the dedication?
Nah, we'll skip the dedication. Let's
Okay.
get to
Get to the meat.
we are. Okay. We named you May. Not May like the month, May, which means beautiful, like the country we live in now, 美国, America. What do you see when you look in the mirror, May? Do you see beauty? We see eyes that point toward the sun, that give us the warmth and joy of 1,000 rays when you smile. We see hairs inky black and smooth as a peaceful night sky. We see skin brushed with gold. We see the hopes and dreams of your ancestors when we look at you. We journeyed into the unknown to give you a new path to trailblaze. In this upside-down world, clever child, you have become our teacher and translator. Our words won't always be enough to comfort you, and we won't be able to be with you every step of the way. We know you feel alone sometimes. People tell you that you're different and that you can't be one of them. But we promise there is power in being different. Are you ready, brave May, to hear about your secret power? You are never alone. You carry a golden flame inside you, and it's always with you. You are made of dragons, of phoenixes, of jade rabbits, and of monkey kings. You are the lotus flower unfurling, triumphant and bright in the darkest water. You are the first bamboo stalk piercing the soil that will overtake the sky. Your voice is the call of the magpie, joyful and unapologetic. It's a strange world we live in. People will call you different with one breath and then say we all look the same with the next angry breath. But they don't know that each of our golden flames flickers distinctly, that our stories are infinitely unique. We are artists, scientists, athletes. We are dancers, teachers, inventors. We are architects, actors, and writers. You can hear all our stories when we gather as a family. There will be celebrations. Oh, we love to celebrate, with plate upon plate of delectable deliciousness that will tickle all your senses. The hot pop and sizzle of garlic in a wok. The lazy curls of steam from freshly kneaded bao. The sesame balls that will leave your fingers slick and sweet. We gather to hope, to dream, and to sing your praises, May. To send love to your popo and gong who are not in Meiguo with us. To pay tribute to those we've loved and lost along the way as oceans and worlds and cultures separated us. Have we taught you the word Ming yet? It means destiny, May. Our destiny was you. Our Ming is to be the keepers of your flame, to guide you as best we can. We see you. We see your golden heart. You are beauty, but so much more. You are strength. You are power. You, May, are golden. Say it with us. Believe it. I am golden. The end. So that's the book. We hope you love it. And it was really nice to be able to share it, Kristy. Thanks for having us again.
Yeah, thanks so much. It was really powerful to hear it in your voice. I have goosebumps also to have you, Sophie, presenting your art at the same time. Just to begin, what was the inspiration for this book?
So I started writing this book during the COVID-19 crisis, which obviously was, an incredibly tough time for everyone. I think for me, the added layer of anxiety was around, a lot of the anti-Asian hate crimes that were happening at the time. You're obviously based in San Diego. Sophie's in San Francisco. I'm in New York. And all of those cities had, really horrific, incidents involving Asian elders in particular. And so I spent a lot of the COVID-19 crisis, especially when, words like China virus were being used, thinking about how I could have this conversation with my young children, my two young kids at the time, and kind of thinking about like the story that I would want my parents, my children to hear, and the story that I imagine that my parents would have shared with me if they were any more forthcoming with their feelings, which they're not. But anyway, that's a whole different panel that we can talk about. And so this book was kind of born of this, the hopes and dreams. And you can tell from the perspective of the book, it's told from like a parent's perspective, almost like a love letter to their child. As a kind of deliberate kind of moment of Asian joy, of claiming, of identity, of being proud of your story and the immigrant story. And so when I wrote the book, it was around that time that Sophie had created an illustration that, several of my friends reposted. And I started kind of like with all the other children's books, it was kind of a similar process where I started like poking around on different artists' accounts. And I was so I just loved Sophie's work so much. And it really spoke to me. And so I feel really fortunate to have been able to collaborate with someone as immensely talented as Sophie. And we kind of cranked this book out, Sophie. We did it in a matter of weeks, and Sophie is not going to brag about herself, so I will do it on her behalf. She's like one of the most terrifyingly organized people I've ever met. Everything Google updated, spreadsheets were made, status reports were sent. It was so inspiring. And I consider myself a decently organized person, but it was amazing to work with Sophie.
Well, we had a very short amount of time to finish the book. I think we had about 7 weeks from start to finish. So it was like I had to pull out all of my tricks, all of my spreadsheet knowledge, all of my presentation making knowledge. But yeah, for me, it was also kind of a serendipitous experience. I had drawn this comic that Eva was referring to the day after the Atlanta shootings, the spa shootings, and it was very kind of stream of consciousness for me. I just wrote down some words and illustrated them a little bit and posted them, and it kind of it just kind of, I seemed like I tapped into something that a lot of people were feeling, and it was very powerful to see that this book kind of came out of that meeting between me and Eva, just because of that pull to post this drawing that I had during that day in March. So it's very magical.
Well, you mentioned, two really heavy topics, one, anti-Asian hate during COVID, the other, the Atlanta shootings. And of course, this is a really empowering and inspiring story. But I mean, how can you use this book as a jumping off point to talk to your children, about those topics? Or how did you, Eva, I know that you said you feared for your parents, you had conversations with them, disguise yourself, keep yourself safe out there. You had incidents where people said snide things to you in grocery stores. So how did you prepare your children for this heavy moment we're in?
Yeah, I mean, it does kind of feel like we're still in that moment, to be honest. It's just less in the press and news now. This also kind of all coincided around the time my daughter was 5, around when COVID started. And by the end of, well, no, we're still in it, but as the COVID kind of restrictions wore off, she's 7.5 now, and she's reading. And so when people write things like "Go Back to China" or things like that on graffiti in New York City, which they do, she can read it and she can ask me questions around it. And so, I think books are a really great learning tool and segue. It's why the work that librarians and booksellers do is so critical, because you can introduce ideas and kind of concepts in a way that doesn't feel preachy. It doesn't feel like, you're sitting someone down to say, I want to talk to you about something. You can pick up and say oh, I picked up this book, or, mommy picked up this book, or any grown-up or caretaker can pick up the book and say oh, I love the cover. And it's just been amazing to see and hear from teachers, especially, to say that oh, the kids pick up the book because the character looks like them. And I think Sophie and I both had a similar experience where growing up, we didn't see books with characters that looked like us. And when I mean, it was the Babysitter's Club, right? There was Claudia in the Babysitter's Club. I guess Cho Chang and Harry Potter for a different generation, but it's she's a side character. She's like not on the cover of the book. And I'm really heartened to see that there are more books, with Asian protagonists, but it's just incredibly powerful for, I think, like a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old to kind of walk into a store and see something like on a shelf prominently displayed and say like, oh, hey, there's a place for me too. And so that's kind of how we kind of broach the topic. It's sad that, it's sad, but the reality that grownups or teachers or whomever have to explain to kids that like, oh, not everyone loves everyone else. It's like some people are angry and don't like the way someone's hair looks or their skin looks. So it just makes the work that making sure there's representation in books even more important, so that kids can find ways to express themselves and understand the world that they want to live in and create.
You're both children of immigrants, and that theme, of course, played very heavily in this book. I mean, what are some experiences that shaped both of you, positively and negatively growing up?
Sophie, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I can. Something that comes to mind is like when I was from age 5 to 8, I lived in Michigan, and at the time I was the only Asian student in my entire school. Excuse me. And one time my mom signed up to be a chaperone for a field trip to a lighthouse. And I think she got us lost driving there. So it was like me and 4 other kids lost. And then we got there really late. And then all the other kids were like, your mom doesn't know how to drive, blah, blah. And it's just like, I think it would have been, I don't know if they would have said that even if I weren't Asian, but just like the fact that I was already feeling othered and different, it was like compounded. And I think that is an experience that's pretty common where like, kids will be kids and they'll say things that are insensitive, but when you have this like lack of self-confidence, or there's something that like you feel like different from the other kids, it just adds this extra layer of like, I don't know, this feels really weird. I want to like repress this part of my identity. I don't want them to know, which is so silly because it's obvious, right? You look at me and it's like, oh yeah, it's obvious. But it was just like this, one of those like moments where I'm like, I really don't want people to know that I am different. And I had to like really do a lot of work to like dismantle that as I got older.
Yeah, I mean, like that's definitely a story, Sophie, that sounds familiar to me as well. I mean, I think there's a line in the book where I say like, you, my clever child, have become our teacher and translator. And I think a lot of first generation Americans can probably identify that. Like, I mean, even now, it started probably when I was like a teenager, but even now, like I call doctors for my parents. I call like if they have if my dad has to send an email to someone in English, it's like I will either draft it for him or proofread it for him. And it's just part of that experience of being a first generation American. Our parents came here, and I hope that this is expressed in the book, and they like came here to like blaze a path or kind of lay a foundation for, their family. And so I feel like a lot of first generation Americans feel that burden of like, you have to do a lot for your parents and caretake them, that some kids it's like never have had to do. Like I have friends who've like, why do you spend so much time calling doctors for your parents? It's like, because they literally like can't express what is bothering them about their knee or something like that. For me growing up, I definitely felt like I lived between like multiple worlds. Like when I was at school, Sophie was the only Asian in her school. I was probably one of like growing up in New York. Like I think my grade had like 2. It was me, and there was a Japanese boy, and it was like the 2 of us in our grade. And maybe in the whole school there was like maybe less than 6, I would say. And then when I went to high school, I was like one of 3 in my class, and we were all like super different. Like we had one person who was like super sciencey, the other person who was like just like really. I mean, they were both academically great, and I feel like I was academically quite behind. But anyway, again, another panel, and I felt like I lived between worlds. And in retrospect, it was probably a helpful thing because I think that I'm pretty adaptable, and I tend to feel like I'm one of those people. It's like throw me anywhere, and it's like I feel like I can like figure it out. But I think that is a result of like my young experience of having to like hop between all those worlds.
Well, Sophie, you wrote that it wasn't until you were older that you found pride in your Chinese heritage. What was the turning point where you went from, I'm a little embarrassed about this, I might want to hide it, to like, this is actually awesome and I'm proud of this? What was the change in your life?
I can't point to any specific change, but I think it was part of me getting older, growing up and having new experiences, going to college, like meeting new people, and like just slowly being less embarrassed. I had always had this layer of shame every time I had to like introduce myself to somebody or like be in a group, just like deep anxiety and social, like, lack of confidence. And just over time, a lot of practice, I learned to accept a lot of like, yeah, I'm this type of person. I'm not like the, blue-eyed blonde like heroine girl who like I've always seen on TV. I'm just never going to be that person. Never going to be Rachel from Animorphs, but I might be like a Chinese girl who's an Animorphs who's like proud of being Chinese. Like I tried to like create alternative sort of like ways for me to like feel confident instead of just me trying to be like oh yeah, I'm just going to pretend to assimilate and to like pretend that I'm not Chinese. So I really had to like, I don't know, I'm sort of rambling a bit, but basically it was just a lot of practice and meeting people and, talking about myself, talking about my family and my heritage. And like, suddenly I realized I wasn't really embarrassed to tell those stories about myself. I was like just saying them matter-of-factly. And that was, I think, like the turning point.
Well, as you mentioned, representation has gotten so much better. Eva, with your children, what are they experiencing? I know that they're still young, but do they talk to you about this kind of stuff? Is it different being second generation? Is it different growing up in this world where there are a lot more role models who look like them?
My son is 5, and I think his consciousness, like I think as they age, their circles of consciousness and awareness just kind of expand. And so I think it's a little early for the 5-year-old still, because he lives in his own world. And like the 1-year-old for sure, his only knowledge is like food, when he's going to get some food, when is he going to like go to sleep. But definitely for my 7.5-year-old Ren, it's like amazing to see her consciousness expanding and her awareness of differences expanding. And, I think that it's certainly living in New York City, even though during COVID-19, there was like just as much racism and anti-Asian hate crimes, if not more there. But certainly living in New York City, and I am someone who grew up in New York City, like the exposure to just like so many different types of people, so many different kind of types of this like accents and languages surrounding them and like skin colors surrounding them helps a lot. But, I would say like I do feel like representation is changing. I do think like when you turn on the TV, maybe in Animorphs, which I actually don't know what that is. Like, so
I think if you ever decide to jump into the wild world of Animorphs, you're in for a treat.
Okay.
It's basically about these like group of teenagers who stumble upon an alien technology that allows them to morph into animals, and they fight crime.
So it's like Power Rangers, but not.
Yeah.
Right? Kind of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Anyway, but like, yeah, it's like when you look at children's programming now, it's so different, right? It's like they put a lot of thought and kind of consideration into making sure people feel seen and heard. When you go to a children's bookstore, there are books like Julian is a Mermaid, or Hair Love, or there's like even a book called like, I think it's called like Lakshmi's Moosh. It's like about a little girl who has like facial hair. It's like there's just a different level of representation. But I will say, I do believe in like mainstream pop culture as an adult. I think that we're catching up, but not quickly enough. It is amazing that there is like a Simu Liu is like a Marvel, superhero now. And, Black Panther was amazing, but it's like, not to be greedy, I do kind of want more. I would like Asian characters not to be playing like, typecast as like the type A doctor, or like the really like hardcore secretary, or like, I just feel like it's often relegated to side characters. And so I'm looking forward to seeing more representation as the years go on, but hopefully faster than it's taken like 40 years for me to see like, an Asian superhero. I hope for the next generation it like accelerates a bit.
Yeah, same here. Well, can we talk about the style of the book? It's so incredible. The words are very beautiful. Of course, the illustrations are very beautiful. How did you go about putting it together, writing it? I know you said it was a short process, but what was your creative process?
So I wrote the book pretty quickly. It was like, if people who have seen my other children's books, it's a completely different voice and kind of vibe and personality to my other books. The other books like Juno Valentine and the Magical Shoes and Roxy, the Last Universaurus Rex, they're very like perky, like dialogue driven, like kind of like just bubbly books, which my kids love. But this book, came from a different place in my heart. It came from a different place and mentality for me. It came during a time, like I said, of like kind of like frankly anxiety and like kind of questioning around identity. And I think that's reflected in the writing where it's a little bit more of a poetic style. And so I think that when I was writing it, it kind of pulled me back to like college and high school when I used to write poetry, not like just write it, but like, it just kind of brought me back to a different part of my creative writing, like, skills. And so after writing the book, and kind of seeing and kind of like obsessing over Sophie, it's like she has brought so much like richness to the book. And kind of, I think because we have a lot of shared experiences, like it really helped kind of make the book just have like the level of detail that I imagined and then some. So like even thinking about the cover, Sophie, maybe that's a good example of how we collaborated on the cover. Do you want to like talk a little bit about like the 56,000 iterations we had?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty clear that we wanted May to be on the cover, and we wanted her to be happy, radiant. It's just a matter of figuring out the right pose for her. So Eva and I went back and forth on a few sketches for various arm positions, various like forms of like happy dance sort of thing, and landed on this like basking in the golden light sort of feel, because that is what we wanted people to feel when they read the book.
Yeah.
Well, Sophie, what is your creative process? How did you make these pictures? I mean, is this done digitally? You tell me.
Yeah. So everything is digital. It's all in Adobe Photoshop. When I got the manuscript, the art director had mistyped and said that art was due in 1 month. And I was like, oh, it turned out it was actually 2 months. So it was like, oh, that's like double the time, but still really short. So I decided that like if I was going to be able to finish it, I needed to come up with like a style that would be like relatively quick to paint. So like I used a lot of these like brushy, loose, expressive strokes, partly because I was inspired by Chinese traditional painting, which I studied as a kid, but also just so that I could like not laboriously go over every line and just like make a big swoosh and have that be the final thing. So it's kind of like a function of the short amount of time and also the cultural inspiration. And I really take a lot of attention to detail when it comes to like deciding on colors and like light in my work. So luckily, like Eva's words were extremely expressive and just like images were immediately popping to mind. And we would have like these video chats where we would discuss what was the next steps for the book and like go over feedback. And then, yeah, it was just like a very smooth process overall.
Well, I know we're running out of time here, but final question for you both. I mean, what do you hope the takeaway is? And also selfishly, when do we get to see your next book?
So the takeaway, I hope that when children read it, whether or not they are Asian, it is what either a mirror or a window and into an experience that they might not have known about. And it gives children, like teaches them empathy for other people's like stories and journeys. Like those, I think, are the best books for kids. Like you don't want it to feel like this heavy-handed lesson, but it just kind of like leaves a seed or a tiny spark of something in them that like hopefully like they can fan into a flame of understanding. Sophie, how about you in terms of takeaway?
Yeah, totally, exactly what you said. And just, yeah, be proud of who you are. It might take a while, like it did for me, but eventually you'll get there, and it's a lot easier than not being proud of who you are. That's for sure.
Yes. And then we're just starting work on something else, but I do not believe I'm allowed to say what yet. Luckily, Sophie has more than like 6 weeks to do it this time. And I have, I think, 6 days to complete the manuscript. So it's a work in progress. I love a deadline. So a deadline staring at me right in the face at any given point. But we're really excited to be working together again on something and can't wait to share it with the world.
Awesome. Well, I'm so glad to hear it. Thank you again for joining us today, Eva Chen, Sophie Diao, creators of I Am Golden. I have some stuff to read here. Let's see. You can purchase the author's book from our indie bookseller partners at bookshop.org/shop/SDFOB. We also ask that you consider supporting our nonprofit partner, the San Diego Council on Literacy, by donating at literacysandiego.org. Continue joining us for more on-demand and live-streamed author panels. All videos will be available on sdfestivalofbooks.com. Thank you again for joining us. I'm Kristy Totten. See you next time.
Hi, I'm Jose Cruz, CEO for the San Diego Council on Literacy, a proud partner with the San Diego Union-Tribune in the 2022 presentation of the Festival of Books taking place this Saturday at USD. Today, we're at the festival site, and in just a few days, this campus will be buzzing with people who love books, love reading, and love writing. The Festival of Books is our community's largest single gathering place for writers, publishers, and book lovers of all ages. The San Diego Council on Literacy is the beneficiary of proceeds from this event. When you participate in the festival, you support greater literacy in our region. This means a lot of things, including more books for children who need them the most. And of course, by being here, you'll have a good time. So please join us Saturday, August 20th, as we converge with thousands of other festival attendees to celebrate the joy of reading here on the USD campus.